Welcome to the Definition of Anarchy channel, where today, on May 12th, 2021, on a Wednesday, I want to talk about the Officer Tatum and how he talked about how he used to gang bang, right? So it looks like your boy Brandon Tatum used to gang bang back in the day before he became a police officer. And you know what's interesting about that? You know, you think that somebody that used to gang bang would have a little bit more understanding and a little bit more compassion for those that gang bang today. You would think that he would know what happens in areas like that that would make someone want to be a gangbanger. You would think he would want to be out there in the streets counseling other gangbangers, trying to get them out of the situation, as opposed to shitting on them as if he's better than them, as if they can't do it themselves, as if they're just throwaways, right? Because, you know, he did a live the other day, and he talked about how he was a gangbanger. Now look at him, right? He's got this thing going on. You know, he started Blexit and Turning Point and all this other shit, right? But, you know, when he talks about impoverished black communities, like it's like it's so much negativity and hatred toward that community when he speaks on it. But he used to gangbang himself. He used to be out there causing the trouble, causing the ruckus, and yet he was able to turn his life around and do better. He was able to come out of that. He was able to become something greater, right? Well, becoming a police officer, you know, you just joined another gang. That's what you did. You just went, you went from one gang to another gang, a government sanctioned gang. You know what I'm saying? Well, an openly government sanctioned gang. So you would think that when you spoke on the black community, black impoverished community, because there's not just one black community, right? The black community is not a monolith. There are impoverished black communities. There are affluent black communities, middle class black communities, where, you know, it's safe and all that other stuff. And, you know, you say you came from an impoverished black community. You would think you would understand, if you were able to turn your life around and get out of it, you would think you would understand the socioeconomic issues surrounding gang culture and criminal culture and things like that. Because, again, I'm gonna say this until I'm blue in the face. I'm gonna repeat this over and over again. Poverty is what drives crimes, okay? Not black culture, like you tried to say. It's just, you know, the way is going about, right? So let's say, for instance, the Italians, right? When the Italians came over here, when they started coming over here on the, you know, through Ellis Island to New York, they had street gangs too, right? Matter of fact, they were having street gangs before black folks was, right? And guess what happened with guess how the street gangs in the black community were formed to help fight against the Italian gangs, okay? A la Bunchy Carter and, you know, those types. You know, and you know what I'm talking about. Black gangs formed to counter Italian gangs in New York. And before that, it was the Irish versus the Italians. You understand what I'm saying? So gang culture is not a black thing, okay? It's not a black thing. It's an impoverished, oppressed people thing. You understand what I'm saying? Impoverished, oppressed people thing. You know what I'm saying? They're lashing out on themselves because they can't lash out against the controllers, against the oppressor. The oppressor just has too much of a foothold and too much of a knee on their neck. You understand what I'm saying? So what we got here, that's how gangs are formed. That's how criminal organizations are formed. That's how criminal empires are formed. Okay, it just so happens that the Italians, you know what I'm saying, thanks to the prohibition, the alcohol prohibition, and thanks to the help of the government, who, you know, had their mindset on keeping black folks down back in those days, back in the 1910s and 1920s. You know what I'm saying? During before prohibition and during prohibition, you know, they were able to become a more organized crime family, right? They, you know, like Costa Nostra, you know how that formed, thanks to prohibition alcohol. So with that understanding, you would think, and with him having been in a gang, right? Brandon Tatum was in a gang. He said that himself. You would think that he would have a little bit of a different approach when it comes to the black community, the impoverished black community. Because again, it's not just one type of black community. There are multiple types of black communities. So I just find it interesting that he would approach it that way. You would think that he would try to help others understand, like his white conservative friends and his white conservative base. You know what I'm saying? You think he would have, okay, look, this is what happened. This is why I joined the gang. You know what I'm saying? This is why I joined the gang. This is how I got out of it. And this is how we can help other youth in these communities get out of it. They just need resources. They need help. You know what I'm saying? They need a light shine on the improvements, right? They need to be, you know, there's nothing wrong with incentivizing youth caught up in some bullshit when they try to do better. You know what I'm saying? So you would think that, right? Like my sister, like my boy Big John, people like that who were in gangs and turned their lives around, and now they're working within the community to help the youth. It's difficult, right? It's difficult to do it because it's so entrenched now, especially in LA. LA gangs are so entrenched, like it's very difficult. And then there's really no real power structure. I mean, there are shot callers and OGs, but 9 times out of 10, the shot caller is not the OG. The shot caller is a youngster who proved itself out in the streets. You know what I'm saying? So, and then the OGs, you know, they become inactive and they're not looked at the same way. Sometimes you got an OG that is a shot caller, but you know, it's very rare. Most shot callers are in their 20s. You know what I'm saying? Like they made a name for themselves in their teens. And they you know, they graduated to shot caller or a G. You know what I'm saying? Or OG. They're young OGs, and they still got that bullshit mentality going on where they still want to be, they want to be active, but there's really no real power structure, right? So what you have to do is you got to catch them while they're real young. The good age, you really want to catch them before they get in the gangs. You want to see them out there, you know what I'm saying? Their brothers in the gang or their cousins in the gang, and they're next in line. They're the heir apparent to the gang culture. So it's best to catch them like right before they get in there. And sometimes you can catch them when they're in. Sometimes you can catch them to turn this shit around. But usually it's when they're already, like, when they're done and they put in the work on the streets and they get out and they're like, well, they're not out, but they're inactive. You know what I'm saying? They're like in their 20s, their late 20s. And then that's when they become a little bit more receptive. But by then, it's hard for them to go back and start talking to the younger ones about how to get out. So, you know, but you would think you would understand that as Brandon Tatum, who was once in a gang in Texas. You know what I'm saying? But you know, it is what it is. Not everyone is meant to get out of a gang and then turn around and help others get out of gang, help with gang intervention, help with gang violence, stopping the violence and things like that, showing people a better way. You know what I'm saying? Because I tell you what, man, if I was a gang member and I watched and I happened to cross Brandon Tatum's shit, you know what I'm saying, Brandon Tatum's videos, and he starts talking about the black community, this, that, and third, I ain't trying to hear that. I'm like, this dude right here, man, just another Bill Cosby, right? Just another Bill Cosby. But, you know, I just wanted to say, I thought it was very interesting because before he would kind of allude to having been in a gang or whatever, having been about that life. But it was recently where the first time I heard him say that he was in the actual gang. He used to gang bang. He had tattoos and all that stuff. I heard him talk about the tattoos and shit before, but he never like went as far as to say, yeah, I was in this gang, that gang. You know what I'm saying? Let me see what y'all talking about real quick. You stupid fool was good. So now Officer Tatum used to put in that work. Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, right. That's almost as believable as the pipeline cyber attack from the Russians. You stupid fool was good. Keep your foot on those clowns' necks. That's what's up, man. True, the gang culture or mob culture from the Italians, Chinese, and also the Japanese are based exactly. Even look over here on the West Coast, right? they were bringing the Chinese over for the railroad and all that shit. They had gangs then. You know what I'm saying? It's not just a black thing. You understand? They had gangs. There was street beefing and all that other shit. There was smuggling, all that shit. And they had different factions. They was fighting each other and shit. Different Chinese factions fighting amongst each other. Chinese on Chinese crime. The Italians, all these different families beefing amongst themselves. Italian on Italian crime. Even to this day. So to make it look like, oh, okay, black folks is the only one doing this to their own people. I mean, come on, that's completely utter bullshit. Come on. You like to say, the Officer Tatum likes to say, well, I didn't grow up white. I didn't grow up this way, so I can't speak on that. Well, it's called research. It's called looking into history, okay? You had Irish gangs, you had Jewish gangs, you had British gangs, you had Italian gangs, you had German gangs, you had Russian gangs. All these from the Caucasus Mountains. Caucasus Mountains, fighting amongst each other. White on white crime. In the UK, hacking each other up with knives and machetes and shit. Right now. White on white crime. But no, black on black crime. That's the problem here. And this is why I have such an issue with Brandon Tatum. And this is why some people might call him a Mickey Ficky coon. If you're going to speak on black crime, you have to speak on white crime. You have to speak on yellow on yellow crime. You have to, whatever you want to call it, red on red, whatever you want to say. There's always been outlaws. There have always been gangs and posses of outlaws that did criminal shit. Crimes against the government or crimes against the people. Some posses and gangs, cowboys and shit, you know what I'm saying? Back in the old Western days, Wild Wild West, they call it. Gangs and posses running around, robbing each other, killing, you know what I'm saying? So gang culture did not start in the 80s with black folks, okay? It didn't. It didn't even start in the 20s and 30s, in the 1910s with black folks. Black folks did it as a response to protect their own communities. And in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, you had the Black Panthers, you know what I'm saying? That was utterly destroyed thanks to J. Edgar Hoover and COINTELPRO. The Cribs were born out of that, and then guess what? The Bloods were formed to fight off the Crips. Then you had the Gladiators having the Crips pushing drugs and shit. Like but this is something that has been going on. This is part of human culture throughout the world. Supply and demand. There's always going to be somebody who wants to supply the demand and get that money or get whatever they want to get out of it. And then as long as you have that, you're going to have rivals, you're going to have competition. As long as government factions, government groups try to, illegalize the substances that people want, that people that want to buy it mutually. The more laws you have, the more law breakers you have, right? The more laws you have, more man-made laws, the more outlaws you're going to have to combat those laws. It's always going to happen because of supply and demand. You know what I'm saying? And then you're going to have, it's natural for groups of people to want to form together to protect themselves from other groups of hostile people. So what do you call that? That's called a gang. Since time immemorial, before human civilization even began, gangs were there. You had tribes warring amongst each other. You had villages and all that other shit. People was crossing boundaries and going on to other people's territory, taking their fucking food. You know what I'm saying? Stealing horses and shit. And then they'd fight amongst each other. That's just the natural order. That's part of the natural order of human life. You know what I'm saying? We're all animals. We just so happen to be self-aware animals. You know what I'm saying? We're self-aware. We're intelligent. We know how to use tools. Our brain developed thanks to You know, they say eating animals and all that shit and help develop the brain to learn how to be complex thinking and all this other shit. Even with all that, we still have that primal urge to form groups of like-minded people to defend or attack other groups of like-minded people over there. So this is what it is. It's not something that's exclusive to black folks. As much as they want you to think that, gang lifestyle did not start with and will not end with black culture or black people. No matter how they try to tell you that. You know what I'm saying? KKK was a gang. Margaret Sanger and them. The Planned Parenthood, that's a gang. You know what I'm saying? They're the most murderous gang. So if you want to step back and look at real life and look at things objectively, gang lifestyle is not synonymous with black culture. It's not. It's part of human culture. It's part of human nature. That's just the fact of the matter. And you would think, as a former gang member, you would have some level of understanding. Why did you join a gang? Why were gangs beefing amongst each other? Territory, women, drugs. This is something that humans like to fight over or conquer. You know what I'm saying? Certain types of humans, they want to conquer every goddamn piece of land they step on. They want to control every goddamn thing. They're gangs. They just call themselves a country or an army. It's still a gang. They still want to go over there and control the poppy fields. They want to go over here and control the oil fields. They want to go over here and make sure Muammar Gaddafi doesn't use gold dinar in former African Union because they wanted their central banks to be over control everything. That's a motherfucking gang. They're just a lot more dangerous and a lot more methodical, a lot more strategic, and a lot more official than the Crips and the Bloods. There are a lot worse gangs than the Crips and the Bloods. You understand what I'm talking about? Ask Vietnam. Ask Vietnamese. They lost millions of people. We lost 50,000. They lost millions, and a lot of them civilians. What? Come on, man. But it's the black gangs. They're the scourge of the country. If you ask the motherfucking conservatives, they're the scourge. Every time something happens, every time something bad happens to somebody, well, what about the black on black crime and the blah blah blah? What about the white on white crime? What about the about the white on black crime? What about the black on white crime? What about the Filipino government killing every drug dealer on the street that they see? That's gang activity. That Filipino president, that motherfucker ain't no joke. That motherfucker's having drug dealers slaughtered no matter what. No trial, no due process. We're talking about people that are supplying that are meeting the demands with the supplies that they have. Mutually consensual transactions. The people want the drugs, and they're supplying the drugs. President said, "Oh hell no," because we can't control these people. They own drugs, running around, all that shit. So guess what? We're gonna slaughter all the drug dealers and all the drug addicts. But no one's talking about that, right? Which gang lied about weapons of mass destruction over in Iraq that got us into this endless war in the Middle East? What about that gang? What about the gang that's enforcing all these unconstitutional laws? What about that gang? What about the gang that's enforcing the closure of businesses during the pandemic? What about that gang? They're not more dangerous. They're facilitating the impoverishment of millions of Americans. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines if you keep your business open. Who's going to enforce that? Which gang is going to enforce that? Brandon Tatum, I'm here to tell you, you never left the gang. You went from one gang, you went from a street gang to the roach gang, the black and whites. You went to the black and white gang, the blue gang. You joined one gang and went to another. Became an enforcer, backed by the threat of government force. The government gang. It's a lot more organized, a lot more structured. They get their taxes, they get their extortion, right? They get their protection money from the civilians. And you enforce that. You break legs. You enforce those extortion fees that we have to pay. We don't pay them. Guess what? You come into our shop to break up all the china. Take it back to our cash register. Break the front store, the front windows. That's you. You never left the game, Brandon Tatum. You still in one. Right? You may not be a cop no more, but now you're a Republican gang member. You're a conservative gang member. Going up against the liberals. One faction against another. That's just the reality of it, man. So yeah. Read a couple comments, I'll get out of here. Polish gangs, yep. What's up, shot killings? French gangs, Ukrainian, Albanians, Armenians, yep. The Great Turk, what they call them? The Young Turks. Oh man, they were ruthless. True, when it comes to gangs, they'll always try to make like it was black people only. It originated mostly from Caucasians. Definitely. You tell these ones that grew up believing in the public full system. Yeah. Prison Pumps by Brent the Buff Black Bull. What's up, man? Now we have Mighty Mouse Gang. Right, we got the Mighty Mouse Gang threatening exposures of child threateners or child predators. Matter of fact, this motherfucker, man, this dude, this YouTube guy, I don't even know if he's a real YouTuber, but YouTube deleted his comment. I don't delete comments, but this motherfucker threatened me. You know what I'm saying? I wish you motherfucking would. Come on with it. Think shit is sweet over here. Go ahead. Think it's sweet. You want y'all feel like y'all want to support your little child predator. Y'all support that? If you think you're going to win supporting a child predator, try me. James Miller says governments are the reason why these gangs are forming. They start crap up and wind up forming a monster. Look at the ISIS. Yeah. Government funded ISIS. Right? Government funded Al Qaeda to fight off Russia back in the 80s. We gave them all that shit. We gave them the equipment. We gave them the ammunition. We gave them all that shit. Weapons. You know what I'm saying? We supplied that gang. Look at Chicago. I mean, now this is anecdotal, but you got people in Chicago talking about how people in black trucks are dropping off crates of weapons in the middle of the street. Government funded gangs, my friends. Officer Tatum is a hustler. Prison Pumps. Anyway, I gotta get out of here. I gotta open up the trailer for the guys to get to working, and I'll holler at y'all later, man. Peace out, and y'all go ahead and let Officer Tatum know about how you feel about his admitting that he was in the gang. Yeah, that's very interesting to me. All right, peace out, man. Much love.